It's a good name.
Wanting a much longer blackboard, but
no, the name's good.
No, the name is good.
The name is good. No, we're definitely.
And I made it be somewhat like eco looking with the leaf, just because I know of her as head of the state environmental caucus. So that's why. So I put a leaf and flowers that actually just kind of look like pink clouds. But
good evening, everybody.
Hi, all.
Welcome. This is a very busy week. So much stuff going on.
Always this time of year, and then it doesn't help that we're still having a COVID situation.
Yeah, and they definitely don't want to give us a stimulus, even though the holiday is right around the corner. So no, they definitely don't care, and they definitely. I'm trying to make sure that everybody understands that we shouldn't have to be begging for a holiday stimulus. Shouldn't even be like that. You got 20 million people, give or take.
It's really hard for me to even entertain these things. It's really such political theater. They actually go back and forth with this. And so.
She's on a little early tonight.
I know, that's okay. I don't know. Are we supposed to, what are we supposed to do?
John, I think we're going to have to go with Janelle first. We're not going to make her wait because this is big. We know that everybody's tuning in right now.
So everybody, what we're going to do is we're just going to get started. Everybody, thanks for coming on. Please subscribe, hit the like button. So I see that Janelle Christensen is in the waiting room. And so let's not waste time. So you guys, we are going to introduce her. She is, I looked this up now, because I had to know what a medical anthropologist was. This was something that I had to understand because I'm like a geek. So I am. So it's really interesting. And so now that's a whole other rabbit hole that I'm going to end up going down, I'm sure. But the connection between aging and climate, and it's a really how it affects health. And it's just really interesting. So anyway, Janelle is running to be the chair for the Florida Democratic Party. And this is definitely somebody that would be a really good boost for this party. I mean, this is definitely the person we support. So Anne was the previous, or is the chair of the caucus, the environmental caucus.
Yeah, and considering that our state desperately needs a new direction in terms of the environment, I mean, we don't have time.
Yeah.
The environment needs to become a central focus as much as anything in the state. So
and it's definitely not been a priority of this party.
Oh no, definitely not.
It's just not. It has not been a priority of the party. So if this is definitely a step in the right direction, is to have somebody leading the party that has obviously an affinity towards environmental causes.
And let's be honest, we really do need a leader of the party who is somebody who is not going to be beholden to the corporate special interests that are pillaging our environment, among other things. So without further ado, we will.
Wait.
No?
Oh, okay. She's there.
She's there.
She moved for a second. I'm like, okay, she's going to go grab water. I'm like, okay, she's there. Hi. All right. Yeah. So can you do that?
Let's bring her in.
All right.
All righty.
Click that.
This right here?
Yeah.
All right.
Hi, how are you?
Janelle, your audio's off. Your audio's off, Janelle.
Something is awry.
Yep. Let's give her a second.
Yeah.
Now the audio is officially off.
Well, now now you're muted.
Now it says you're muted. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. There you go.
Technology. Yeah. So I came on earlier because I was afraid I'd have technology problems. So I didn't mean to surprise y'all. I just was trying to cover my bases, but
not at all.
No, that's good. That's good. And we had put this out that you were coming on tonight. So there are people that are probably jumping on for that. So it's just as well. But yeah, you've got to now talk a little bit about medical anthropology, because clearly it's really cool. And so that's what you have a doctorate in. And so obviously this is something you're well versed in. So explain what that is, because it's really cool.
Well, yes. So basically anthropology is the study of the human experience, and it has a very broad definition because of that. So you have people who are anthropologists that study primates, that study all of the past existence of human civilizations, those that look at all other animal morphologies that ever existed in the past and look at what is similar and what is different. And what makes us uniquely human? I think that's the main question that I ask my students is, what is it that makes us human, and what makes us different from other animals, and what distinguishes us as one culture versus another? So it's very broad. Linguistics is another subfield of anthropology. You have archaeology, the study of past human civilizations. You have the biological anthropology, and then there's also an applied anthropology, and that's kind of what I do. Both my parents are nurses, so I kind of grew up looking at healthcare, and I was an EMT when I was in college. So I was really interested in the actual in that, but it's very methodical. What I kept asking big questions though about how healthcare was provided in different places. Why is it we did things the way we did? And I just really wanted to get to the root of the answer there. And I started doing research or volunteering abroad in Germany, in Peru, and kind of learning about different healthcare systems and comparing it to what we're doing. Now, the reason why I ended up in Florida in the first place was because the University of South Florida is one of the few programs in the nation that has a dual degree program in anthropology and public health. So they're already recognizing this connection between what it is to be human and decisions we make about the economy and about healthcare. And I ended up looking at hurricane preparedness for older populations in Florida. So long-term care in Florida, we're kind of at the bottom of the barrel, especially nursing homes. We've seen how hard they've been
definitely.
with COVID, seen how they get hit particularly hard in hurricanes. And when you start thinking about it in that sense, you begin to connect you find the connection between health and the environment. Hurricanes are related to the climate in that the warmer the oceans are, the warmer, the more intense hurricanes can be.
And they stall over us.
Right.
And that's the thing. They're slow.
Yes, but they become stronger faster.
Yeah.
So that sometimes they're slow, so they're sitting there and dumping a lot of water.
That's the problem. Even a category 1, if it sits on top of you long enough, will crush you.
So Hurricane Harvey was a good example of one of those where it just sat there and flooded Houston. But here in Florida, we had Irma, and we're not even talking about what happened in 2004 and 2005. We were hit with back-to-back hurricanes, and Katrina hit New Orleans. And of course, it was the older populations, and it was people from lower income strata, and it was people, our Black populations that were hit the hardest. And that shouldn't be. That is a completely human-made problem. Climate, storms are exacerbated by our pollution to the air, but ultimately, it's how we choose to respond, prepare or not prepare to those issues that makes it worse or makes it deadly. So in that way, we are fully responsible for that. And this has been happening for hundreds of years. I don't know if you know this, but even in New Orleans, they intentionally flooded the historically Black parts of town, right? Yeah. So this has been going on to protect the rich folks. So this kind of decision making has a long history. And so that's sort of what brought me to doing research here. And doing graduate school is very intense. I was very happy to come here, but it wasn't until 2016 that I started getting really scared. I was frustrated with some things that were happening, but it really hit home that I needed to be more involved. And the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting happened, and I remember this photograph of these incredible students that went up to Tallahassee, and they tried to get the legislators there to make a difference, to take a stand. And I remember this photo of them in tears because the legislators wouldn't do it. They wouldn't even have a hearing on this legislation.
Of course.
And it struck me so much that I had just moved. I was like, all right, who is my legislator? Who is my state legislator? And why do they have this level of power? Because, everybody hears about Congress, but you don't hear a lot about the state legislature so much. And I remember looking it up, and then I looked up how my representative had voted and saw this history of atrocious decisions.
Where are you, by the way? Where are you?
I'm in Lee County, Florida, so it's very red here, Fort Myers.
I mean, let's preface it when you're pointing out, if you're going to be calling out your legislator, let's call out your legislator.
Okay, it was Heather Fitzenhagen, who is actually considered a moderate because she has crossed party lines maybe 3 times. So the first thing I did, though, when I was looking at her record, I was like, oh. And I immediately was like, somebody running against her. And there was, because in 2018, people started becoming more mobilized.
Yeah.
And we had 2 people here in Lee County in Collier that were graduates of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. And one was a medical doctor and one was an ecologist. And here we were also having harmful algal blooms. There were just all of these factors and these amazing women. We had a person with a doctorate in microbiologist. Amazing people were stepping up and running, and I started volunteering. And I ended up managing Dr. Tabe's campaign for the Florida State House 78 against Heather Fitzenhagen. And we did it all. We had educational conferences. We created a statewide coalition with other candidates who were running on a kind of a evidence-based platform. But mind you, I had no idea how to do any of this. It was a regional representative from the Democratic Environmental Caucus who taught us a lot about the root causes of the harmful algal blooms. He was has his doctorate in agricultural engineering, and he worked with press releases. He walked us through the science. He got us into meetings with Senator Nelson, who eventually unfortunately lost the seat. But it was just incredible what the Democratic Environmental Caucus could do. And I was very grateful for it. Unfortunately, it was a devastating election year. Senator Nelson lost his seat. 𝘗𝘦𝘢𝘭𝘵𝘩 did not win. We thought, well, here we are in a red county. Even if we don't win, at least we can cut margins for the statewide candidates. And we were disappointed when that didn't happen, except for Commissioner Freed. So I wanted to maybe crawl under a rock for a little while, because it's, after a disappointing election, it's hard to bounce back, I guess. But when Dr. Caucus asked me to start a local chapter for the Environmental Caucus, I said, okay, yes. And in that role, I started getting more involved with the local DEs in the county. We started a number of different programs, and that got me on the board of the statewide board of Democratic Environmental Caucus. And I became really concerned that it wasn't very focused, and we were coming up in this 2020 election. Trump was president, and pulling back all of these critical pieces of legislation.
I tell everybody when it comes to Trump, I honestly don't care what you think of him with his tweets or any of that stuff. His record on the environment, that is public enemy #1 with him, as far as I'm concerned. It is the biggest reason he needed.
Yeah. Absolutely. He's a developer first, president second. He doesn't care.
Yep.
And it's almost like he had declared war on any legislation that made it harder for him to build out or pave over things. That was my.
So let me ask you this. Clearly, you're someone who cares about public health and the environment. So are you a supporter of Medicare for all?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Okay. And you also support the Green New Deal, right? Or at least transitioning from fossil fuel to transitioning,
100%. That, in fact, some of the candidates I recruited to run for office this last round, they came together and created a Green New Deal for Florida, but they called it the Climate and Economic Defense Initiative. And it was looking at the unique needs of Florida and how our unique industries could be transitioned.
How do you reconcile these things with the Florida Democratic Party? Or,
Well,
and you know what? We could even take it further than that with any Democratic Party, quite honestly.
it's so, I think when I look at how Democrats vote on environmental issues and the kind of legislation that's being presented, I see really good stuff coming out of it. Ana Escamani, 𝘏𝘦𝘢𝘭𝘵𝘩 Rodriguez, Annette Taddeo, Cindy Polo. There were good pieces of legislation that have been presented, and because the Republicans have control at the state legislative level, it's largely ignored, and people don't understand why critical changes aren't happening. And it's because,
well, I meant more from a perspective of being like a feckless party. I meant more of the party, not our particular legislators. I mean, the Florida legislature, and for anybody watching, it's so ridiculously red that it's just like the best that the Democrats can hope for is sort of holding afloat some of the stuff that's not draconian. But I'm talking more just in terms of our party, the fact that it's not standing up for labor. It's not standing up for Medicare for all. The party platform is no one's fighting for anything. It's just get this candidate in. And that's really frustrating.
So you're right. And I think I've asked several people to look at our Democratic Party website, and the only thing you can really find that resembles a mission or value is the phrase, fair is worth fighting for, which is a good slogan, but it doesn't really ground you in decision making, and it doesn't help all that much. When you look at the Republican Party, their mission is clearly stated as strong conservative leaders. So they can ground all of their, and that's measurable, and they can ground their decision making in that, and they can tell that they are aligned with their mission, and they have done it to our chagrin.
They have a mission and they get behind it. The truth is that so long as our party is equally co-opted by things like Big Sugar and Walmart, and that's at the state level, let's be real, that's not even taught, federal is even worse. We're still in with military industrial complex and fossil fuel industries. So long as we're doing that, all we're going to get are platitude sandwiches. That's all we get is platitude sandwiches. It's the best you're going to get. Nobody really wants to talk about policy and really doing that. It's just rah, rah, go team blue. And so the problem with that is it alienates a chunk of people that would otherwise maybe get involved, particularly the people on the left. And there are so many people, and I can speak as to locally here, that have just had it with the corporatism in the Democratic Party, and they would otherwise be attracted to that if it went back to being a labor party. So, I mean, that's what we're trying to get to happen, and I'm very skeptical that the party can ever get back to that.
I think it can. I think that there's no magic bullet, but there's still a lot that could be done from the top down with the right leadership. And just, I have spoken with some other candidates, and I've really encouraged them to consider what I'm about to say. We need to have a very clear mission about that the party is dedicated to helping our candidates run ethical and winning campaigns. And if that is where we're grounding all of our decision making, then things like taking sugar money will be put in a different light. Because let me tell you, my day I was elected as president of the statewide caucus, it was at the Democratic Environmental Caucus, it was at an FDP meeting. And that night there was a special event funded by Florida Crystals. And there was a big poster.
Yes.
And I remember, and everyone was like, this isn't okay. And I said, no, it's not. I'm going to have to engage with leadership on this issue. And I did. I had a meeting with them. I explained why it was problematic and that I understand we need money, but this hurts candidates. There were so many candidates, like the candidate I worked with, here we are dealing with harmful algal blooms. And there was a very strong commitment to not taking money from problematic industries. And then the FDP went and put it on a poster, and it just undermines so many candidates that are working hard against that.
And our only recourse is, unfortunately, people know that, like, I'm stuck in this party right now. I'm stuck in it because there's no other way to do it in this district. And it's very frustrating when this should be the Labor Party and this should be the party for working for regular people. And then you have our 2 losses of our 2 congressional seats in 26 and 27. And, you know, the fact that those people are still blaming it on the left. They're still not grasping that it's this centrism that is not working. And, you know, I just want to know, like, what your idea is in terms of, you know, where you see the party, like, going, you know, from a platform perspective, like what we should be working on doing.
So right now we have something called the Resolutions Committee, and I've been involved with that. And there's really wonderful resolutions that have been put forward, but there hasn't been any real connections from those resolutions to policy or platform. It's like nice suggestions. People put a lot of work into it, but it doesn't seem to actually matter when it comes to a lot. So if we want to make, we're going to have to tie our decision making to the goal of helping people win, and that means talking about things that people care about. And there's a couple of ways we can do that. And one is we can take the resolutions that all of these people are putting together and recommending the legislators take seriously. The other thing that I recommend is that we have a lot of talent in our party. We have a lot of lawyers and people who are researchers.
There's no shortage of lawyers.
There's no, but I mean, there's also a lot of researchers, and again, maybe they aren't engaged in the way that they should. If I had it my way, and I can't promise this would be done in the first year if I were elected, but it would be a goal that I would like to set. And that would be offering certificate training programs through our DECs to people who want to learn how to run focus groups, who want to design actual meaningful surveys and how to analyze them and translate those into messages, so that we are actually in our local areas, not depending on big firms, but rather working to have our own folks learn about our community. Canvassing's good, but there are other ways that we can also professionally respond to the attacks on the party and speak to the issues that we think are important. Because, labor is incredibly important. And that's the other thing with, the sugar industry is the machinist union is tied very closely with it. So how do we force or work with the sugar industry without alienating the labor unions?
Well, now we're going to have to, no, but now we have to distinguish between, are we working with unions or are we working with helping labor? Those are very different things.
Very different.
So, those are very different things.
Yes.
So, but all right. So this is a big thing that we had to deal with running down here, is being completely ghosted by the Democratic Party. We were ignored, all the clubs, nobody, they pretended and still are pretending that our race never happened. As you know, our local environmental caucus refused to even entertain the idea of doing an endorsement in our race. And this basically was across the board through, and I'm talking from our local all the way to national, we were ghosted. And the general excuse was, oh, we don't get involved in primaries. Yeah, no, I don't think that that's true. I think it's you ghost candidates that are going after people that you, for whatever reason, feel scared of or beholden to. And that kind of nepotism and stuff disgusts people, and that's a big problem. Like, we were ghosted.
I 100% agree. In fact, the state level Democratic Environmental Caucus had to step in and take over the Broward chapter's endorsement.
So you're aware of our chapter, and we don't need to get into specifics.
Yeah, but we had to step in because they were refusing to do what they were asked to do, which are endorsements before the primary. Yeah, and they were doing it. And so we stepped in.
Also, so now take it. So that's just from, you're talking one caucus.
One caucus.
Now, correct. So now multiply that by everything, and we were ghosted. You were the only person at a state level to recognize us, other than Progressive Caucus. And then locally, the only group that gave us anything was the Black Caucus.
The Iron Workers.
No, but I'm talking clubs. Yes,
Yeah.
the ironworkers did. The ironworkers did they stood up against the
Janelle,
AFL-CIO.
Janelle, one thing I would say is a major problem, and I just discovered this today, but it turns out that, and we're not going to say his name because we know who the chosen candidate is of the establishment. But the fact that his campaign is being run by the political director of the SEIU, I have a very big problem with that, and I think everybody should. And
so explain, you're going to say that.
Yeah.
Explain what you're saying.
Yeah.
We don't need to name names, but explain what you're saying the conflict
well,
is.
what I'm saying
SEIU
is
a
that
union.
the SEIU is, it's one of the,
union.
it's a service union. And the person who is the political director of that particular union is essentially working for an anti-labor candidate.
Correct.
That is a very big problem. And it is a very big conflict of interest, and people need to know this.
Well, how is that different than our local AFL-CIO leader not granting interviews, not granting any sort of screenings, and just getting behind the candidate who doesn't understand what their problem is with trade agreements?
Well, again, I think it just gets back to the money factor.
Well,
I think anybody who knows that the chosen candidate of the establishment for the party chair is somebody who has the financial backing of Bloomberg, who now systematically thinks he's going to take over the state. That's pretty obvious that that's the plan. So I would think, more and more people just need to know about this.
Yes.
And there is the other thing about Florida politics that I don't think it's talked about enough is we have a completely entrenched consultant class. It is a very big part of the problem. There's a lot of people who depend on that money. We've been to Orlando for multiple events, the gubernatorial race back in 2018. Obviously at the time I was very enthralled with 𝘗𝘦𝘢𝘭𝘥. I thought he was clearly the best candidate, but there were a lot of people that were there that were effectively just looking for a job. I mean, they're not really there to support the party, support the causes. It's what's my next career move, and that is a very big conflict of interest, and it is a lot of money that they get paid, as you know.
And so the establishment is trying to basically coronate somebody. And what concerns me is, and again, I don't want to be naming names, but it almost seems like other people get involved as strategic spoilers and all sorts of other nonsense that goes on. And it's like watching a train wreck in slow motion, and it's really, really frustrating. So I just want to urge people that are watching this, especially people that have votes in this. Janelle, when is the election?
January 7th, unless it's going to be, they said officially it was within the first 2 weeks of January. January 7th was the last I heard. But
and it's all precinct people vote, right? Is that what it is?
So no, it's so for the chapter chair, for FDP chair, it's the state committee people. So
okay,
all of the DECs, the local county officials are going through their votes right now. They're all elected by the precinct captains. So anybody who doesn't know how the system works, the precinct captains have the power to elect state committee people and DEC chairs. And then those people go on to elect the larger party, the statewide party leadership. And right now there's a weighted vote. So
I'm wondering if our friend Ken is out there watching this tonight. Is our friend Ken Evans out there watching this tonight?
Oh, hi, Ken.
I don't know if he did. He has in the past been he has been a follower before. But if in fact our friend Ken Evans, our favorite local committee person, is watching, please shout out to you and consider please voting on our behalf for Janelle.
Yes. So your state committee man and state committee woman all get a vote in the election.
Right.
And I believe that is that 134 votes? And 67 counties, there's 2 per county. Is that
for the FDP, like Miami-Dade has 120, 126 votes because it's weighted by population.
Right. So basically, yes.
So 2 committee people in Broward is bigger than 2 committee people in Lee.
Interesting. So
right.
Yeah, so you basically need to clean up in Pinellas and Hillsborough is basically the sort of the balance the balancing act, if you will, because Manny, forgive me for saying it, but basically that is the person that needs to be is going to have so much of that influence, if you will. But
Yeah.
I feel like things are changing right now. We're just at a point where we're not all the way there. There's a lot of this old guard that doesn't want to let go and doesn't want to accept the fact that it's a desperate time, especially from an environmental standpoint, a healthcare standpoint, among other things, that we really have to change.
So this is the thing. I want to just sort of make a plea to the older people, the people that have been there for a while and their establishment, and they just are used to the way it is. I am begging you people to please step aside in terms of let some new people, new fresh blood ideas, a little bit, just bring us into the new century.
And not only that, but let's be honest, there's a lot of people throughout the state of Florida who cannot stand Broward, Miami-Dade. They can't. They don't like the fact that they basically are the ones that are dictating the terms throughout the entire state. Quite frankly, one of the reasons I think Ann Eskamani is as good as she is because she's literally in the eye of the hurricane. She is in the center of the state. She's exactly she's the perfect distance.
Yeah, she's great.
Perfect distance from Gainesville and Tallahassee to Jacksonville and down here to the southeast corner. But the southeast corner kind of fancies itself as its own state, and that's something that we really need to get away from. And having that influence.
It's like, you mean down here in SoFlo? It's like we're an ethno state. We're our own little ethno state down here. It's like pretentious South Florida.
I think, yes, I think one of the issues are that elections are so different in Broward and Miami-Dade. There are some safe blue seats that are not going to be dealing with the same issues of somebody trying to run in Collier or Lee County or in Panhandle. It's very different. And when leadership comes only from that perspective, then we're going to be having a lot of orphan districts. We're going to have there's going to be a disconnect in the way campaigns need to be run or the kinds of attention, because there's a lot of benefits for running candidates in red areas.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people I got pushback from people in the Southeast when I recruited candidates to run for the state house and the state Senate, because they thought I was spreading resources too thin. And I thought, what resources? Like, we raised filing fees largely from out of state, small donations. And I've also heard, like, if somebody can't raise $200,000, they shouldn't be running.
Yeah.
And I think that's baloney. I think that we need
that's a consultant class argument.
And
that's
it basically keeps people out. And this is something that it's a chicken and an egg thing. So we had a lot of different organizations basically say to us, well, we would endorse you if you had more money. And I'm thinking, well, we'd be able to get more money if you would endorse us. So it's kind of like, why don't you just back the candidates that are pushing the policies? And that's so like, for me, it's all about policy. What are we trying to do? What does being a Democratic candidate mean? Not all Democrats are the same. So I don't agree with the Big Tent. I think you need to stand for something. So either we stand for people who have healthcare or we do not stand for people who have healthcare. Like, there's certain things. And the people who suggest that are starting to slowly be very questioning if the Democratic Party is a big enough tent for them.
Yeah, I think, there's a couple of approaches. I think that we need to have some very clear boundaries, but we need to, the Florida Democratic Party itself, like, there's House victory, Senate victory, and then there's some support for the congressional candidates that come from the federal level. FDP, like, nobody knows what it's there for. It had a lot of reasonable, really good programs. Some were really good, some not so much. But unless you have a unifying cause to bring them all together, you're not going to get anywhere. And I also think needs to be a bigger role for the clubs and caucuses for pushing policy.
Sure.
So, policy. And I'll just tell you, just so you know, I had a conversation with our local chair probably about a year ago. And, it was all about, well, we just gotta win seats. And I'm like, okay, but what are you winning on? Like, what's your policy? Like, what are we pushing? How are you wooing the people over? And she said to me, and this was the manner in which she said it. She said, all we're doing is registering voters and banning assault weapons. And that's it. And I thought, yeah, this is why we're not getting anywhere here. And this is why people that are in crisis right now are not thinking that they're going to be helped within this party. You know, this is a problem.
I agree. I think so. When I took the role of the environmental caucus chair, we saw our mission as kind of the environmental conscience of the party, and it was our job, therefore, to evaluate the existing policies, and that which was written, and evaluate whether it was good or bad for the environment, and communicate that to the public and to our legislators that were going to be voting on it. And the reason, and that way because we're on their side, we're not paid lobbyists. It can be very confusing. So it's our job and we're all volunteers, but it is our job to help them understand why this is bad and why they should not vote for it, and to stand for something. Now, there are some legislators that are, this is their issue, and so they already know it, and we don't have to spend a lot of time educating them. But for the most part, there are thousands of pieces of legislation that are floating out there, and they have to go through committees. They're changed all the time. And we have to be there to remind them. Now, the Environmental Caucus and the Hispanic Caucus is starting to do some of that. The Women's Caucus has been doing that. But this is where the policy, I think, should come from. It needs to come from the caucuses who are supposed to be the experts in this area and can communicate things that maybe the legislators don't have time for. And that means we have to be working on the talking points. We need subject matter experts to be a resource on call for all these people. There are things that can be done that can help our legislators make better decisions and to write better policy, and then we need to make sure that the public knows about it, because like $15 minimum wage, people overwhelmingly voted for that.
Of course.
But they weren't connecting that with the Democratic Party.
People support populist policies. People support Medicare for all, but yet the Democratic Party refuses to really stand for it. And our representative, of course, won't get behind that, not in a million years. And so, this is not complicated. If the Democrats want to have a broad range of people that they speak for, they need to embrace populist principles. And these are populist ideas. And that's just the thing. Most people want these things. This is not radical leftist.
No. When it's divorced from the label of the party, some people are more open to it maybe, but we have to also explain this is what we stand for. Because I'm looking at how people vote, I can show that the Democratic Party is markedly different than the Republicans. They are way more likely to be voting against the bad stuff of the environment and for labor issues.
Yes.
But the Republicans are consistently against it, and we aren't communicating this to the public. So that allows Republicans to come in and say, oh, I sponsored something called the Clean Water Act. It doesn't matter that it had all these preemptions and actually hurts the environment.
Right.
How do we communicate that more effectively? It's like we just let that go.
Yeah. Well, this all goes towards our broader effort of just overall education. And really what we're trying to do, our mission on this show is transforming politics into service.
I love it.
Because this is meant to be a term of service. It's not meant to be a career. These people are not meant to live there and collect these salaries and then come out of, they term out of the state house and they go right into the county commission, and then they go into something else, and then they go, and these people, it's like this giant incestuous pool of people that are just collecting paychecks.
There's so many things. And I do have to say, it's very weird because the state legislature, Congress pays well. State legislature, it's $29,000 a year. They're only in session for 60 days.
Yeah.
To me, is outrageous because there's so much that needs to be fixed in this state.
Yeah.
Well, when you compare that to other state legislatures across the country, like California, for example, California's a full-time job, and they actually pay very well. The state legislature in California, I think, pays like $130,000 a year.
But even if you want to talk about that, you could probably find a lot of people that for 60 days of work would find that to be a lot of money. And so, for what it is, and really it's more just about the power and the people that do it. And it's the stepping stone. These people are in this for the long haul.
Getting money in alternative ways. They get in these positions. It doesn't pay that well. In fact, it's impossible for somebody with a real full-time job to actually become a representative. If you're a teacher, it's hard. You have to give up your job. if you're a lawyer or something fancy, then you have that flexibility. So it's fitting in that way. But then you have they're getting contracts, they're doing sweetheart deals, and they're getting money in other ways, and this is positioning them for that. It's not the
these are people that essentially spend their entire lives not working and just collecting money, and it's coming from a variety of sources, whether it's building developers, whether it's who knows what it is, it's whatever perks, and these people just rotate all through everything.
Yeah, and I think we're definitely seeing a lot of the awakening of sorts with people that are starting to see what this is all about. Because a lot of times, you don't really know where the issues are coming from. You know that the corruption's within the system, but you don't know how you're being taken advantage of. And once you figure out that this is what the cause of the problems really are, the fact that there is a really big crossover, and especially in the state of Florida, between the state house, state senate, and private enterprise, that is a very big problem, because this is a state that is almost solely dependent on tourism. I mean, that is how we make our money. This is a state that's very transient, and we really are dependent on people visiting Disney and visiting the South Florida and the West Coast Florida beaches. There's a lot to be said for that, and no one, you would think on the Republican side, which is a party of business, you don't necessarily find it there per se, but the Democratic Party side is supposed to be the party of labor, and in this state especially, it is anything but that. So we do have some questions. We have a wonderful, friend and supporter of us who is in the labor movement here in South Florida, and she has some questions, particularly about some of the responsibilities as it pertains to being the FDP chair. How do you feel about the weighted vote? How do you feel about term limits? And obviously, with everything that transpired, how do you feel about transparency?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so those are three really big questions. And I guess I'm always for term limits. I think that term limits are healthy. I think that there's so much turnover in the FDP that might almost be moot. But when it comes to let's see, so there were three questions. The weighted vote.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I absolutely will commit to audit. We have
there you
to.
go, Carolina.
There's your
That's
answer.
Carolina. Carolina is our friend. She is an amazing activist. She is also with SEIU and is one of the people that if somebody is out protesting for people that need things, it's her.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
I think so. There were so many weird things that happened. That we absolutely have to have not just a forensic analysis of our finances, but we need to have a professional evaluation of how decisions are made. I think that can be done in the first 6 months. There are organizational psychologists out there. There are people who they evaluate. In fact, another congressional candidate, Dr. 𝘗𝘦𝘭𝘰𝘶 𝘗𝘦, she has evaluated, and several nonprofits looking at their processes. So yes, we need to look at everything. And then it needs to be addressed through the bylaws and our mission, and that needs to be clearly defined. And transparency, yeah, we absolutely need more transparency, because we're not going to be. So I recruited a number of candidates in seats that people didn't seem very interested in running in, and we raised the filing fees because it was getting pretty close to the deadline. But this, goodness, I'm so sorry. I was like,
look, I'm a middle-aged pothead, so this is just like, I mean, that's like my life right there in a nutshell. So yeah.
I know. I'm like, no, this
Brain
is
fart moments.
Labor, though. It was relating to the question. And now I'm like, okay, well, whatever.
Well, we could talk about weighted voting, because that is, yeah, I mean, we sort of touched on it a little bit in comparing like the counties, but yeah, so wait, and the question was, how do we feel about it? How does she feel about it?
Essentially.
It is elitist.
It's an important question. It's very big. There's a whole
It's the Electoral College.
That's what it is. That's basically, because I actually support the Electoral College. I support Electoral College reform.
So do you support weighted voting?
I think that we need to. Well, it's more important what Janelle thinks.
That's true. Yeah, what do you think?
So here's the question. So as I described, there's a weighted vote earlier. And that is going to be in place for electing the next FDP chair. That will not be in place for the vice chair, by the way. It's one person, one vote. So it's a completely different system, the way the vice chair will be elected. However, this question has been posed, and I've heard two different proposals for change. One is that you eliminate weighted vote entirely, and it's really just one state committee person, one vote.
Yeah.
And then the other proposal is, okay, well, if what we have with the weighted vote is kind of an oligarchy. You have some places with two people who have, 64 votes or 63 votes each. And what if, and then like here we have 4 votes, I think in Lee County, 4 votes per state committee person. Well, what if, this is the proposal that one group put forward. They said, well, what if in places like Lee County, you actually got 4 state committee people, and then you have more people, more diverse voices coming to the table, and then
you have it be more like how representatives are, where there's committee people proportionate to the amount of people, not more votes per committee person. I mean, that is logical.
Democratizing it a little bit. Now, having 64 or 123 state committee people in Miami-Dade seems excessive, but we could democratize it more and bring more people in. And then it's harder for a special interests to capture, because it's easy to convince 2 people to do.
Well, like it's also, look, it's all relative. So like, would it be acceptable for Lee County to have 4 committee people, but then maybe Broward should have 12? Yeah, that's definitely something that, it would have to be obviously proportionate based on.
It could be democratized more. And I feel like that is a good solution, because there are, population differences are good. There are more Democrats that need better representation and
more people should have more people representing them, right? I mean, more people should have more people.
That is the solution that I am most comfortable with, because it's bringing more voices to the table. It would allow for more diversity. It would make it harder to get a lock on one perspective. You'd have to work with more people, and that can be hard and messy, but I think it needs to be done, because Miami is a big place. It really should have more people presenting their ideas. And Broward, there's a lot of different groups in a lot of different areas, and wouldn't it be great if we had more people coming to the table to talk to
term limits? That was the question.
Term limits. That's right. Yes, everything I've read is that,
and I'm assuming that person is referring to for elected political positions, not for chairmanship of the FDP position, right?
Well, there are term limits for there are for, but not for Congress, I guess.
Right. No, I know. So I'm assuming they mean for Congress and not for you, because I'm assuming that,
So Congress, the state House and state Senate have term limits, and that's fairly new. 2012, I think, so about a decade, and it's a good thing. And the research shows that if there are term limits, it encourages democracy. Otherwise, there's so much inertia. People don't want to show up to vote. It's the same old stuff. They're like, he's fine, or she's fine. But when there's new people, it brings fresh ideas, and it engages people more. And we need that. And so I think term limits are a good thing, and they need to happen.
Yeah. I mean, our congressional contingency down here, I mean, there's a group of people, I mean, whether you're talking about Frederica Debbie, Lois Frankel, I mean, it's these people have just been sitting there for so long. It's absurd. It really is. It's absurd.
Yeah, because once you well, it's the same.
I mean, it's
look,
crazy.
I mean, the same problem exists on the West Coast with, any of the, I mean, the Republicans tend to fluctuate surprisingly a lot in the state of Florida, but obviously Charlie Crist has been in elected office for I guess it's like probably close to 25 years now, or something like that.
Well, they just doesn't he moving to different counties and running for things,
or changes parties, does that too, and that's okay.
There'll always be some loopholes, but I think it is good to force people to get out of their their rut. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but to force them to change. And I think certainly continuity and understanding how the system works is good, having people who know, but then some people just start getting tricky, and I have seen it where the intent of something gets completely lost. So I think it's healthy to have term limits.
Yeah.
Before we conclude, obviously you're not alone in this race. We know who the kahuna is, but obviously there are a number of candidates who are running. So if you can make your pitch to, obviously there will be a lot of views on this video. So we certainly would like more and more people to know about you. And what would you say in a nutshell is what would distinguish you from the rest of the candidates in the race?
Sure. So, I mean, I got into this race because at the time, Manny Diaz was the only option, and I kept waiting for other people to step in, and nobody had. So I decided I was going to. Since then, more people have joined, and I think that's good. We need choices. But what makes me different is I'm relatively new to the party. That means that, okay, maybe I'm not as experienced from some perspectives, but it also makes me fresh. I have a lot of new ideas, and I have implemented them enough. I know how the DECs work. I know how the FDP works. I have organized. I've been working at the state level, managing a number of different chapters around the state, and we have made a measurable difference. We really, and also I'm from a red county. I think that matters because I bring a perspective of how hard it is to run for office, and when it's an uphill battle.
It is. And then there's those of us in the party that are fighting our own party.
That I was just going to say that. So there are all of these barriers that are in place that should not be there. And some of them are easy to fix if we just have a slightly different attitude. We need to talk about data, that, van data is bad. We need to look at alternatives, or at least make it van data more accessible and not so expensive.
$3,500
for Congress. And it's ridiculous. And so I know that the party
$10,500 to become an official candidate with the state of Florida. So that's 15 grand right there if you want to run. 14 grand if you want to run.
It's prohibitive. And then the paperwork is a whole other thing. And that's not party's fault. That is the system.
That's the election process. That's the election process.
Yes, but just to be clear, everything seems to be built to make it harder to be a candidate and to be a successful candidate. And there's so much that could be done from the party, FDP level to make it better, to make it easier. And I think that we can regain, our reputation and faith in the party. And once that happens, then maybe more small, like $5 a month donations can start coming in and sustain some of this. Maybe we can democratize how our party is.
And you'll get a lot more supporters, and it might not necessarily be a financial windfall, but it could be a vote windfall.
Correct. It's engaging. People feel ownership.
Yeah.
And it's when these, there's a lot of stuff that's been done because people want to play it safe.
I think people are really. I'm not, like I said, there's the consultant class, there's the power brokers, there's people like that. That's always going to be there, but obviously their share of the pie is exceptionally too big.
Yeah.
The people that want to run, that want to serve their communities, that are, whether they're teachers or nurses or whatever it is that you may do, and you want to serve your community, I think they are really underestimating the power of the Bernie model and how effective that actually is. If you run with no corporate money, you will be surprised how many people will donate $5, $10, $15, $20 a month to help you win, because they know that there is the distinction between whether being corporate or non-corporate. That is it. The whole dynamic of, Democrat versus Republican, conservative versus liberal, a lot of that is going away. A lot of people can see that that's really a farce in many respects. It's really about, are you on the corporate payroll or are you not? That's really what it is.
It's incredible too, in these red districts, a lot of these candidates raise maybe under $10,000, and that's including their filing fees, but they made their opponents spend $100,000 or more.
Easy.
And that's another way of, and we made them pay attention. We held those people accountable. They were incumbent Republicans who were able to set the narrative and be like, I'm the environmentalist. And we're like, no, actually you were not. We had somebody actually there. So we made them spend money without taking corporate money. You can run really decent campaigns if the party's there not charging you money for data.
And if the party isn't ghosting you and fighting against you every step of the way.
Listen, we love Cindy. We love Cindy Benai, who ran a really solid campaign, even though it was against a red district. But she did it grassroots and did a fantastic job.
She's incredible. She's actually the person who's been, she was the one who really convinced me to run. I was fighting running, and she was like, you have to.
No, I'm glad you did. I think it's great. And I think that, we are just be aware that we're very aware of what they're trying to do and how this is working.
Once you're in once you're in the game long enough, you kind of see their moves on the chessboard before they actually make them. It's very transparent now. They're not. The truth is, they're really just driven by a boatload of money. They're really not that strategic. They're not really that sharp.
Well, obviously, I would be winning more.
That's true too. But again,
that's not their primary purpose.
No.
The other thing is that in the state of Florida, I try to tell people all the time, you do not understand how popular Trump is in this state and how popular his populist rhetoric is. This is a working class state. Yes, you have a lot of rich people, but the overwhelming majority of people who live in this state live paycheck to paycheck. The working class movement, the working class message is a winning message. You just have to be willing to take that chance and say, I'm not going to be beholden to the corporate money, and I'm not going to run with the consultant class. I'm going to do this through the people. And you would be shocked at how successful it could ultimately end up being.
You're so right. I think the Republican Party's been really good at this is the anthropologist hat. I'm going to circle back to that. There's very basic human emotions, and the Trump administration has been really, really good at tapping into some of the more negative parts of the human nature, if you will. I think that the Democrats can do something similar, but tap into our better side of the human condition. We want to be part of a group. We want to take care of our neighbors. Most of us are good and kind, and if we were doing things like wearing your mask is taking care of your neighbor.
Yeah.
Being kind to your grocery, instead of like, I'm owed this, it has to be my way, the highway, be like, look, we have to be kind. And that is also something people want to do. We want to be thought of well by others, and we can tap back into that. So that is part of messaging and marketing, and the Republicans have been great at exploiting our dark side. Let's be the light. I think we have to stand up for ourselves, and we have to be strong in our response to attacks. But I think if we talk about what it is we want to stand for, I think we can do a better job. And
I think the future definitely belongs to what we're fighting for. There's no question. It doesn't happen overnight, and especially in Florida, it is not going to happen quickly.
But with somebody like you, it gives me hope that the party isn't a completely lost cause. And so I appreciate that very much. So, people, if you are in touch with your committee people, or if you are a committee people,
give Janelle a look. There's no reason not to. Obviously we.
Do you have like a website? I mean, like,
put this in the chat for you.
I have a Facebook page. I have a Facebook page. I've been putting, some short blog things online, some short, stances. I have some positions that I put forward. I mean, honestly, the most basic thing is that I am really committed to helping candidates win, running ethical campaigns. I am committed to transparency. I think
even if they're challenging a Democratic incumbent.
Yes, absolutely. I help. I may be kind of on the list because I encouraged and supported some primaries in Broward.
Good.
I think it's important to communicate to the public who is actually representing which ideals. And sometimes you get an incumbent who's good and a challenger that's good on one issue, and then you need to let people know that. It shouldn't be a game of playing favorites. They're definitely, I encourage some really young people, Stephen Metza.
We know Stephen very well. Elijah's, he's an ally for sure.
Yeah.
They both are.
I was so thrilled to work with them. And I encourage them to get involved with the local caucus because I see them as future leaders. And
Oh, definitely.
We need their voices so badly. And so let's lift them up. And let's not penalize people for challenging the status quo. But, yeah.
Well, again, unfortunately, a lot of the status quo, especially in South Florida, are, I'm not an ageist, but a lot of them are of considerable, much older individuals, and a lot of them are also Dixiecrats, and their views are significantly different than ours, especially from, in terms of progressive ideals. But again, nothing lasts forever. So with that in mind, if anybody would like to follow Janelle, is it just Janelle Christensen on Facebook? Is that the easiest way to find you?
Yeah, it's Janelle Christensen for FDP chair. Hang on, I can find.
Yeah, so there it is, everybody.
Yeah,
for
here.
FDP chair.
I'm going to put it in our chat. Maybe you can put it up.
Sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
sure.
That's even easier. So whatever we can put up there right now for you, we will do that right now.
On Twitter, I have my Twitter handle for the Janelle FDP, I believe. Let me just double check though, before I put it in there. But I'm on Twitter. I have, basically just for this, which is talking more about my position statements that I put on the links to podcasts and other interviews I've done. I share the articles about how we recruited, a number of candidates. And again, that wasn't necessarily a popular choice. We had, Janelle FDP. Let me put that too.
So guys, check this out. This is a very, very good, solid option if we want to start having a party that actually represents regular people.
And we'll try to get some of the other candidates on as well. We want to have as many voices out there as possible. Again, we do not need the party establishment putting their thumb on the scale for one person, which they're trying to do, and make it so that we have a democratic process. If Dr. Christensen is the best option, then she should be the chair.
Check her out.
Yeah, and just so you know, I do encourage that there's some other good people that I am really glad are running also. Wes Hodge out of Orange County, and there's Dr. Cynthia Chestnut from Alachua, and I hear Ione Townsend has just joined the ranks from Hillsborough. So there are other folks, and we need to ask the tough questions about what kind of commitments they're willing to make for a number of issues. And I think, though, some would be good leaders too. So
yeah,
absolutely.
I'm going to invite.
Very sporting.
Yeah.
Did you say you were going to put it in the chat real quick?
I did. I put in private chat. Sorry. Maybe I need to put it in comments. Do I do that in comments?
Yeah, put it in comments.
Sorry. Oh, look at that. There's a whole bunch of people there.
Yes.
Okay, so it doesn't, do I have a way to actually, it's not letting me.
I actually see it. Don't worry about it. I'm going to put it in right now.
Okay.
You're good.
So everyone check out Janelle, and thank you so much for coming on. And we look forward to talking with you again sometime.
Yes, absolutely. Regardless of what happens, I'm going to be around.
100%.
So
thank you, Janelle.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Definitely.
Okay, but here's the thing that's funny. So normally we kind of go from bootlicker to change maker.
Yeah.
And so we're going to do like the reverse. We're going to be like the Seinfeld in reverse episode. So we did our change
So
maker.
I think everybody would agree that Dr. Christensen is definitely a very strong option for FDP chair. We're definitely going to try to get some of the other candidates to come on. She mentioned several of their names.
I encourage everybody here to think of those same types of questions for whoever you would consider supporting.
Correct.
And to any current
Carolina,
committee people.
Carolina had great questions. I think those are very relevant to the discussion.
But I think current committee people, we are begging you for some change.
Yeah,
we really are. So if the idea is to put someone in there to keep up the status quo and be a placeholder, it's just not going to do anything.
If you put in the status quo candidate, you're getting Ron DeSantis for 4 more years.
You really are.
So bank on it if you do it.
You really.
I hope that's a lesson you're willing. I hope that is something you can all live with.
They will.
Just remember that. Well, for the money, they will. Yes. How do I get involved?
All right. Wait. So what was, okay. So there was a question here I wanted to answer. Go up. Oh, How do I feel about progressives withholding their vote for Pelosi? So we're going to get into that in a second. We'll talk about that.
We'll circle back to
that.
But we want to, Leroy, we will also mention how you can get more involved. We're going to hold on 1 second. I'm going to put the email. If you can, just 1 second. If you'd like to get involved, I'm going to put the email in right now. It is generationalchange@gmail.com. So if you'd like to volunteer with us, especially, whether helping out with the podcast, whether you want to be involved with GenCorps, we need as many people at the local level or throughout the state.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're local and you want to do volunteer work with us with GenCorps, please, that's great too. But if you are not local and you still want to get involved, there are a lot of things you could be doing to help our podcast. We always need in-kind things. We'd love to have somebody who really wants to handle doing our webpage. We'd love to have somebody who wants to do
a lot of stuff.
We need people that want to volunteer.
This is what happens when you start growing. You gotta be prepared for all different possibilities. And so while we've definitely had what I think was a great change maker of the week, I think anytime
does it make sense to do that and then news and music?
I'm going to go to bootlicker of the week because I think right now, we just had somebody on who was talking about the really positive type of change that we're looking for, especially for working class people. And it's never a shortage of the individuals that you might be able to have as far as who the bootlicker of the week could be. But Old Reliable decided to stick her nose into the equation this week. And that, of course, is Ann Coulter. She put out this lovely tweet that says some nut foreigner. Well, we all know what a bigot she is to begin with, so it's not surprising that she would say it that way. Why didn't we use
the picture I wanted to use?
Well, I don't know, because this is John's decision.
I have a very specific picture of Ann Coulter that is akin to Elf on a Shelf.
Well, Ann Coulter is another.
And it's a blunt on a,
Ann Coulter's just like Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She's a drug warrior, and, we love people like that. We love people who don't want anyone to have any fun in life.
She's a blunt on a cunt.
Yeah. So some nut foreigner was just on MSNBC demanding that Biden appoint a food czar to solve the national hunger crisis. A dozen federal programs is not enough. This is like...
There have been so many worse things she said that are
but this is just so unbelievably callous. You've got 20 million people that are about to be thrown out of their home. I mean, it's... I just, for the life of me, I am not... Do you really have to do that?
You can keep talking.
All right.
Doesn't matter.
I just it's Ann Coulter does not hide the fact that she doesn't give a damn about anybody but herself and I guess the white race. It's just
she's evil.
Yeah, she's really a despicable individual. But if you ask Bill Maher, they're really good friends and, would have her on any time. I'm not saying that people need to be ostracized out of society, but Ann Coulter really doesn't bring anything to the table that's of any considerable value. She really doesn't. She absolutely has the worst kind of Reaganomics, when it comes to this whole idea of walking on the poor, that you have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. If you're not, you're a failure in life. That type of thing to me is...
That's the picture I'm talking about.
Yeah, can you please take it off? It's really distracting.
Sorry.
Jen wants to just make a point about the fact that Ann Coulter is evil and she's anti-weed and all that stuff.
Well, my point is that she's just an evil cunt. She's a horrible human being. She's always been a horrible human being. She's never brought anything that's meaningful discourse.
She's call Donald Trump,
evil
though.
And a hater and just whatever.
She did call Trump.
Whatever.
She did.
Doesn't matter. So you know what? A broken clock is right twice a day. That doesn't make you be a decent human being.
No, and she constantly, she is as... If you think Tucker Carlson is a hardliner on immigration, this lady makes Tucker Carlson look like an advocate for immigration. That's how bad. That's how bad she is. And so, of course, she's going to take it one step further when it comes to, again, food dependency. I would just ask, it's kind of like that argument about, when somebody says that the Mexicans or whoever are taking our jobs and they're working for $3 an hour, I would ask you this. Do you really think anybody wants to work for $3 an hour? Or are they so desperate that that's what they're willing to take and they're being taken advantage of by a completely crooked system? That's the problem. No one wants to work for poverty wages. Nobody. So stop convincing yourself that that's the problem.
Yes, well, they're taking those very important jobs.
Damn, they
that
took our
everybody's
jobs!
lining up for.
They took your job!
Okay, so on to our next segment, which would have been first is News and Amuse. And
we'll answer, before we go, Brian
okay.
McGuire said it was for Janelle. Brian, I don't think that's any relevant for Janelle because it's not a statewide issue. This is a federal issue when it comes to Pelosi.
And healthcare and Medicare for all.
Brian, if you're tuning in, the very first podcast that Jen did was actually with Shahid Buttar. I'd highly recommend checking that out if you haven't had a chance.
Yeah.
That was a really good one, and it's very relevant right now with everything that's going on.
If you haven't, please hit the like button, subscribe.
Yep.
Check out previous episodes. We've done some really cool interviews. And what do we have coming up? We're doing a live next week we're doing a Christmas
we're doing a Christmas Eve live, and we're doing a New Year's Eve live as well.
Can I call it a Festivus?
Festivus for the rest of us.
I'm much more of a Festivus support. I got
a lot of problems with you people.
I was going to say,
and you're going to hear about
airing of the grievances.
Oh, we're going to have there will be an
Wait.
airing of the grievances on Christmas Eve. I can assure you.
Oh, I have grievances.
Yeah, we all do.
We should have feats of strength.
Oh well, until you pin me. Festivus isn't over.
I'm bringing a Festivus.
You all better be Seinfeld fans out there, and if you're not, you need to be watching.
It doesn't matter. It's a Festivus. Okay, so that's next week, right?
Yes, next Thursday. We may have some very special guests.
Well, we hopefully will have a very special guest.
Yes.
But I have gotten very used to not putting things out there until it actually happens.
Yes.
Which doesn't allow for really good ahead of time promotion and graphics, but it also allows you to not be disappointing and looking like, when it doesn't work out. So it's kind of a trade-off.
Yeah, we had that situation last week with Rose McGowan. We thought we had her. Then she said no. And then in the middle of the podcast, she's like, oh, no, I'd like to come on now.
And then she came on. So we kind of, so it happens. Oh, yeah. So for anybody, if you haven't seen that, check out my interview with Rose McGowan. That was really fun. I've had a lot of really good interviews, people. Check it out.
So we've got some very important news for this week, because obviously there's been a number of important topics that have come about, and we're going to knock them out right now that are, what I would consider to be, the hot button topics. So we're going to start. We'll save the most important one for last, which is of course Jimmy Dore and AOC. But we're going to start with we're going to have what I consider to be the very good and the very bad of the Biden cabinet, which just happened within the last day.
Okay, let me be very clear that it is 99% bad, with one just ridiculous Pete Buttigieg as the pinnacle of ridiculousness.
Who's doing news?
I'm sorry. I saw the rat face. And then there's only one good. So can we get to that? Can we talk about the good?
Jen is still living off of her wonderful tweet that we put out a little while ago about the fact that Mayor Pete is actually perfect for Secretary of Transportation, since he knows a thing or two about throwing people under the bus. So,
I cannot wait to see the memes for him driving a bus.
Yeah, no, that's definitely coming.
Somebody please do a meme of him driving a bus and running over Bernie. It has to.
Because that's exactly what he did.
And especially as Department of Transportation.
The idea that he was put in charge of the Department of Transportation with for those of you who don't know, he has an abysmal record as mayor of South Bend. He's not okay. He's not bad. He is horrific.
Check out Jordan
the racist policies that he had as mayor of South Bend that never get talked about, that they have tried to gloss over, the gentrification, everything. I mean, status quo. Jordan Cheriton, please check out his reporting. He went to town on Mayor Pete and absolutely exposed you would never know this by watching corporate media. You would never know the record of Mayor Pete when he was the mayor of South Bend. And what it also goes to show you is that the system is set up where they can make anybody a somebody. This was a small town mayor, and he is now somebody that they will be grooming for president in the not too distant future. As a matter of fact, it's very likely. We all know that Biden is going to be a one-term president. So if they're going to try to anoint Kamala, I guarantee you that Buttigieg is the one that they're going to try to put as her VP.
Yes, he is. He's the white
the psycho repeat.
He's
you go from the old white guy to the black to the woman of color. Now the woman of color to the gay man. It's just identity
But-
politics is going to be the death of the party.
And so people go, if you are not familiar with Status Quo, I highly recommend it. That friend of the show, Jordan Cheriton, an actual journalist, and he spent a very, very significant amount of time on the
in
ground
South Bend.
in South Bend,
Yes.
talking to all sorts of people, both within like the political scene there and just regular people. And there is a whirlwind of information about Mayo Pete.
They are definitely, like I said, they are trying to make they are trying to make Kamala and Mayor Pete happen.
I know.
This is what the corporate media does. You have to see it happen before it happens. You have to spread the word and say, this is what they do. This is how this works.
Thing. We will get a worse Trump before that will happen in this
Guarantee
country.
you, if Kamala Harris and Mayor Buttigieg are the nominees in
That's
2024,
it. We're done.
kiss it goodbye.
And I don't even care who the Republican is. It could be anybody.
It'll be if it's Tom Cotton, he'll win, guaranteed. You put all your eggs in one basket to get Trump out, and it worked one time because of a once in a century pandemic. That's what you got, and he barely won.
I know.
So don't think.
And Biden underperformed.
And not only that, but right now they're trying what are you trying to do?
I was going to say. I was just going. All right.
No,
never
we're
mind.
staying with the screen as it is.
Okay.
So we're at the point now where they're really trying to give us the least amount possible without us taking out pitchforks. I know everyone thinks that, both sides are terrible. I will say this. We definitely support Reverend Warnock and John Ossoff, even though we're not fans of them winning their Senate seats in Georgia because Mitch McConnell absolutely has to go.
Yeah,
and
that's the only
That is the
reason.
biggest reason. That is and maybe the single reason.
I would support neither of those people.
Yeah.
Really, I wouldn't. I have no, but that is one person that has got to go.
And you can make the argument that, well, they'll put a bad person in, but you have to remember McConnell is so entrenched for so long.
He's got to go. And you want to talk about ties to China?
Yeah.
He is.
If you can't beat him at the ballot box, you got to find another way. Just like Pelosi is.
Horrible.
Pelosi's finished in 2 years, even if she gets a speakership again. That'll be it for her. So the two of them have to go. They got to go. And then Schumer, I mean, listen, I don't know. We'll get to AOC. I don't know what she's up to, but if she's thinking about primarying Schumer, it's probably not the worst idea in the world because he's got to go.
They all have to go. They really do.
House cleaning absolutely needs to happen.
Why is Bernie there?
I'll tell you in a minute.
Okay.
So
I don't like looking at Bernie in a mask.
The one great pick that Biden has actually made with his cabinet was appointing Deb Haaland as Secretary of Interior. She is the first Native American that will serve in that position. Now, everyone's like, well, what about identity politics? Let me tell you something. The first citizens of this country have no seat at the table whatsoever.
I don't even think it's about her identity. It's about what she's done.
And she is a very good representative, one of the few.
She stood up for Standing Rock.
Yes.
This is somebody who has actually walked the walk. Now, if this were somebody that they were just appointing there and happened to be a Native American, that has about as much meaning to me as the Congressional Black Caucus does in terms of what their politics are on the Black community. So the fact that he appointed a Native American woman is completely meaningless to me, with the exception of this particular Native American woman has walked the walk. So that makes it good. The fact that she's Native American doesn't.
And you could say whatever you want about how Biden is throwing a bone or anything like that. But the truth of the matter is, it's a good pick. And if he makes a good pick, we're going to say he made a good pick. This is not a question of, oh, well, let's just hope Biden does everything wrong and it'll be easier to, to beat these centrists. It's not about that. You have to live in the now and you have to do whatever you can to get the best possible options in the moment. Mayor Pete, one of the worst. Deb Haaland, clearly the best he's made so far, period.
Well, and I'm also very thankful for the 𝘏𝘂 Fudge appointment. Because that gets us
𝘏𝘂 Fudge. And 𝘏𝘂 Fudge is a good representative. So
she is. But that appointment gets all of us one step closer to Nina Turner being in Congress.
And if Nina Turner is in Congress, there is your leader of the progressive movement. 1,000%. There will be no one. And to be honest.
No, it scares me. The whole thing scares me. I was very nervous about the whole idea of her going.
But you know what? Having her as the leader, even in the Democratic Party, is much more ideal than somebody like AOC. Not that we don't like AOC, but it's clear that she can't do this alone, that I don't want to say she needs a break, but she needs somebody to take the heat off of her.
She needs a leader. She's not a leader. She's an activist, and she could be a leader. She could, first of all, she's very young. So this isn't like some sort of like judgment about her.
No, she's been thrust in such a significant position. Yeah. And right now she is caught between doing the right thing, but potentially squashing whatever potential opportunities she may have as a leader of the movement going forward.
And
I very much sympathize with her. And yes, Jimmy Dore doesn't make it easier because he goes scorched earth. And that is a problem. It doesn't mean his idea is not good. We both agree it's good. But the problem is he does not know how to build coalitions. He is all about telling people the worst of what they are and never about the best of what they are. So I know we're kind of flipping around right now, but before we get to that, we just want to point out you have an independent senator and a Republican senator who are holding up the congressional delegation from going home from Christmas because they're fighting to give us stimulus checks. Not a single Democrat is doing this. So I don't want to hear nothing about how this is a party thing because it isn't.
But Bernie's not a Democrat. That's what they always say. He's not the Democrat.
I'll take it a step further. Do you really think if Claire McCaskill was still in the Senate that she'd be standing next to Bernie right now fighting to get us a surplus check? I don't think so. I don't. And let me tell you something.
She's too busy licking boots over at, what is it? Where's she at? MSNBC?
If Josh Hawley decides to run for president in 4 years, and they pass a surplus check right now, you better believe that that's going to carry significant weight in the Republican primary. It will. Because people remember things like this, people who are actually willing to buck orthodoxy. Anyone who stands up to Pelosi and anybody who stands up to McConnell is okay in my book. And kudos to them, because people are desperate right now. 20 effing million people might be thrown out of their houses in a couple of weeks. I am not in that position. Jen is not in that position, but we know a lot of people that are, and it ain't pretty. So if you are not suffering, try to put yourself in a situation where you will not have a home, in the winter, no less. It's not pretty. So kudos to Bernie. He doesn't fight nearly as hard as we want him to, but the fact that he is at least fighting is more than we could say about almost anybody that's in politics right now.
It's true.
And that is a great segue to the last point, which is this major issue that has come up now, which is, do you attempt to, light a fire under all of these elected officials' rear ends, particularly the squad and the progressive contingent within the Democratic Party, and force a floor vote on Medicare for all by withholding your vote for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker? I actually believe that this is a good idea. I think that people who are getting caught up in the notion that it's bad because it's Jimmy Dore who's bringing in the idea to the table, you really need to get out of your own way, because the reality is you don't have to pay attention to Jimmy Dore. It's not about him. You pay attention to the issue. People are desperate and are dying, and we are the only major developed country on earth that doesn't have an effing healthcare system that is universal. Only one.
Am I allowed to say something?
Go ahead.
Because I actually have a slightly different kind of thought on this. It's like, I see the point of forcing a floor vote because you're going to see where people stand. I mean, obviously they know it's not going to go anywhere.
You don't know that.
Well, okay. But that aside, okay, this is my issue, is that we're still thinking really small. Can somebody please explain to me reasonably why there is no other option for Speaker of the House? Why is nobody who in there willing to do this and challenge this woman? See, this is my problem. The fact that the best we can do is withhold our inevitable vote for the only option we have to get a vote on something that may not even happen. Yes, I agree. We'd love to see where everyone stands on Medicare for all. I'd love to see that. Have a floor vote by all means. We could have a party for it. I'll do a live stream. But what I don't understand is why all we're willing to do is temporarily withhold our automatic support for Madam Speaker Mama Bear. And this is the kind of crap. Again, that's Mick resistance. Why is it assumed that why is she the only option? Why is that the only thing on the menu?
Well, again,
this is infuriating to me.
She is the only option because the party is again, Pelosi is only going to be Speaker for one more term. This is the end of the road for her. And I think a lot of people are just content to say, all right, let her have it, because the Democrats are going to get wiped out in 2022. Everyone knows they are.
Well, if there's anything the Democrats are, it's content with mediocrity.
Yeah. And then, of course, you're going to have the midterms in and then you'll have the election in 2024, and there will be a primary in the Democratic Party. So I
sure hope so, because if they're sticking up Kamala and Buttigieg,
oh, it's coming. And let me tell you.
Have at that, people.
The will of the people is what demands the change. And again, this is where I do think Jimmy is right. You basically have to grab them by the throat. There is no other way to do this. You can't be nice, because what you're trying to do is take down. It doesn't matter.
Angry at me.
No, I'm not angry at you.
You're just yelling.
Don't tell me what to do, all right? The reality is we're in a situation where this country is beyond desperate and there's no other way. You have to get people on the record. We already know Debbie Wasserman Schultz is not going to vote for this, but we know that there's a lot of other representatives out there who may be coming with the illusion that they're going to vote for it.
Well, there's
but
over
really
100
not.
people in the Progressive Caucus. Where are they?
Nobody is
Where are
going to, even if they're
Where's
not.
Mark Pocan? He's the head of the Progressive Caucus.
He's feckless.
Well, the Progressive Caucus has over 100 people. Wouldn't they all be chanting for Medicare for all? Why does it require withholding a vote for somebody that you're inevitably giving your vote to?
Yeah.
Wake up. Why are we not demanding that our representatives demand a better speaker? Why are we like, that's why my problem is.
It's all about the money, because very few elected officials at the federal level are not funded by corporate money.
So when I see people sitting there and debating about, well, should we withhold the vote and force a vote on something that may or may not happen, whatever, you're asking all the wrong questions.
What do you think is going to happen if you withhold the vote against Pelosi? The future belongs to us. It doesn't belong to them. People know the government is corrupt and they're starting to figure out how to beat it.
Take a stand.
That's the point.
People take a stand.
Yeah.
But it's like, so yes, I agree. They should withhold their vote for their inevitable vote to get the little vote on the floor.
And
do that. That's fun.
And David Sirota, he brought up a very good point, which is you have to negotiate like McConnell does. You don't just go there demanding a Medicare for all vote. You go there with like 7 different things and say, I ain't moving on nothing until you give us
this.
Know
what? We had Bernie who set the standard, which was ask for nothing and concede everything.
Correct.
And there's no mandate. There's no nothing. And then people are acting so surprised about the majority of these cabinet picks. So, again, they're not our friends, people. They're not our friends. They don't want to work with us. They don't want it. There is no compromise to be had. These people are not our friends. So again, I reiterate, let people like Jimmy Dore scream at the top of the rooftops, get a new speaker. Where are all these representatives? Where's the 100 people in our Congressional Progressive Caucus? And why do they just get in line behind Nancy Pelosi? Take a stand. It isn't a matter of whether you win or not. It's like fucking doormats in there. And it's so frustrating. That's the problem I have with this whole segment. Like, okay, great. Withhold your vote. Force a vote on Medicare for all. Great. Yay. And then go ahead and put Nancy Pelosi in and we still won't have Medicare for all.
No, but the argument is that we're in a very desperate situation right now. And a lot of people might ultimately decide that, yeah, you know what? I don't know if I can face my constituents during a deadly pandemic and say that I voted against giving them health care, because most people simply don't know. It's this whole argument about name recognition. People simply just don't know. In this county, Debbie Wasserman Schultz has a monopoly on every single corner of the Democratic Party. Every one. In fact, I still say she's the leader of the whole state party. And she probably is. But this is how they maintain power, is by never...
Well, the person with the money is who's in charge.
Exactly. And this is what happens. And that's the whole thing with Pelosi. Pelosi has all the money. And that is the problem. Because of very few individuals, whether it's AOC, whether it's, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Ro Khanna, Katie Porter. There are some that do this without corporate money, but there's not a lot. There's 435 of them in the House, 535 of them if you count the Senate. We're not even able to challenge the Senate yet. You probably could in small states, but even then,
we can't. We tried that.
Because the establishment has their hooks in this stuff for a very long time.
And running a congressional race is outrageously expensive.
It is.
Running a statewide race is impossible.
And for anybody out there who wants to do this,
can do that without
and anybody out there who wants to do this, let me tell you something. Everyone who wants to run and believes they can and is willing to serve should absolutely run, but you must be strategic about it. If you are not strategic about it, you are wasting your talent and your value.
Well, I think that people need to look at, we don't need to get down the strategy rabbit hole about that. But I think that people need to be more cognizant of what they run for. Where is the need?
These relationships within these communities are so much different than you would find in a lot of other places. And that in itself is a very big part of the process. Trust, familiarity. They say it's like the enemy that you know. Yeah, I know this person stinks, but I've known them for 30 years and I'm going to vote for them. And that's that. So building those relationships is everything. And in conclusion, Jimmy's got the right idea. He has the wrong execution. That's the difference. You have to be aggressive. But if you think that you can just shame people You can shame the establishment who are standing in the way, but the people who are fighting on your side that believe in what you believe in, they may say no right now, but shaming them is not going to convince them to come to your side. If you present a good enough argument and you welcome them in, I guarantee you can flip them. Guaranteed.
Okay, so this is a good segue into me talking about something that I've thought about. This will be my muse because I'm having a muse. I'm supposed to have, this is supposed to be news.
So muse it,
I'm
baby.
supposed to be news and a muse, so I'm going to muse. So
Take
these
us
are
home.
my thoughts on Jimmy Dore, okay? I have no problem with Jimmy Dore. He's exactly what he claims to be. What concerns me are people that view people like him as sources of news and or journalists. So what I want to do is I'm going to delineate something very clearly for people that are watching this. There are 3 levels of YouTube talking heads. 3. There are 3 levels, okay? You have original news sources like journalists, your Jordan Chariton, Max Blumenthal, Abby Martin, Rania Khalek, Chris Hedges, Glenn Greenwald, Aaron Mate. I mean, I could go on. Okay, those are journalists. That's your level 1. If you're going to listen to one of those people, chances are they've done their own investigative reporting, probably from on the ground of where they're reporting. So, for example, when Max talks about Venezuela, he actually interviewed Nicolas Maduro. Okay, so that's a number 1 news source. So there's those. Then you've got tier 2. Tier 2 are commentators that are very, very bright. They know this industry, they understand politics, and they analyze the information accordingly. Those are your people like your Kyle Kalinskis, Mike Figueredo, David Dull, Sam Cedar even. I know people don't always love that, but there are people that come at this and really analyze with a certain level of sort of, academia, but also a knowledge of how things work. I personally watch Bo the Fifth Column, Kyle Kalinske, and Vosh. For anybody who's interested in where I get my news, those are my tier 2s. Okay, so I have my tier 1s and then my tier 2s. Then there's this last and 3rd tier, which really makes up what most people consider mainstream media, as well as the rest of the talking heads on YouTube. And these are people that are just spewing the information that they want to, that suits their narrative. So they're not doing their own investigative research. They're not doing really.
So you'd call these what, pundits? Or?
And Jimmy Dore is one of those people. And again, there is nothing wrong with this. I have no problem with that. But that is not a news information source. So at a bare minimum, your information source needs to be a tier 2. If your information source is only somebody who is commenting on other people's reporting in such a way that it only suits their narrative, that is not a journalist, and it is not a tier 2 analyst. It is not either of those things. And so people like Jimmy, they have what their narrative is, what they want to do, and they find the stories and promote them accordingly. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but we need to take it for what it is. So that's really what I want to say. So when people say getting on Jimmy, it's nothing to do with Jimmy.
No.
He's not a news source. And just people need to be very aware of that.
And let's face it, there's also a lot of people that are very jealous of him. He has built an amazing platform. He's had almost a million subscribers, and he's done it in like 2 or 3 years. That's insanely fast.
All the power to him, and that's great, and yay. But I urge everybody to find a primary news source. The Gray Zone is excellent. That's Max, Aaron, and Ben. You have The Intercept is good. What else is really good? I mean, what would be your
Daily Poster, David Sirota, and a number of other people.
I mean, there's really good news sources. For me, people ask me where I get my news. I'll generally check things like a Reuters to see what's going on. And then I'll start looking up where the experts are in those areas. So like if I want to know about Venezuela, I'm going to see what Max has to say about Venezuela, right? Because he's done the research and the reporting. So if I want to know what's going on in Flint, I'm going to go check out Jordan. Jordan Chariton does the best, I think, when you talk about domestic reporting, getting into where regular people are living and suffering and really showing what's going on and exposing the filth and the corruption that's keeping these people in these positions. That Status Quo is great, I think.
Jordan
for very specific. I mean, domestic.
Well, like Rania Khalek, we have a lot of great. Max Blumenthal is definitely more of we have very good international journalists in independent media. In terms of domestic, Jordan Sheridan of Status Quo is the standard by which I think.
Yeah, I mean, well, nobody else is doing this stuff. He was the only person that was on the ground in all the primary states. He's the only person. Nobody is sending people out to actually do real reporting anymore. People need to understand this. They're being told talking points and just reading them on air. That's what most people think of as news. They're not actually investigative reporting.
No.
Jordan is the only one I know of that's really doing that, you know, domestically. But you have people like Abby and Max and Aaron and, you know, like that are doing that, and Rania, whether it's Middle East or South America. And I think that that's a really important thing, because our news here regarding international stuff is completely backwards and skewed. And then we just don't cover the domestic issues at all. So we're still not talking about the fact of the filthy water. And Flint is not the only place. I bet you if we really tested it, like half of our cities would be absolutely just the infrastructure is disgusting. And I bet you if we really wanted to dig deeper and we went into all of the mayors of those states, we would find equal as filth and corruption as we did in Michigan. So, yeah, and nobody talks about that. So we have a media that doesn't talk about domestic problems and lies about the foreign problems. But that also has to do with they just don't know. Bless their ignorant hearts. I have a friend who always says that about things. Bless her heart. When I posted,
well, we are in the South, so
about Jill Biden, and she went, bless her insecure heart.
Well, I have my good friend Ashley Osborne has checked in. Ash, love you. Good to see that the Titans are doing well. She's my good friend who lives in Nashville. You know, for you know, and I put the names of the people in there.
Yeah, I know, but I want to put some more.
Oh, you have more that you want to put in? Okay.
Yeah, that. But yeah, I mean, just that's a good start.
No, we are not in the business of burning bridges or getting into the gossip nonsense that goes on with, you know, different people involved in political media. And I got to tell you, and I want to close with this, you know, before I came here, I had the unfortunate privilege of having to listen to CNN for about 5 minutes. And I got to tell you, it is so obvious how the military-industrial complex completely owns that network, and how they were still spewing the Russiagate nonsense. And it's like, what is your end game? What do you want to do? You want to go to war with a foreign power that has, you know, nuclear capability? I for the life of me, I'm just glad I don't watch it. But what it also tells me is, for the 5 minutes that I had to listen to CNN, think about the people who watch it 4 or 5 hours a day and how brainwashed they are. And how when you try to have a conversation with somebody who you know is watching MSNBC, CNN, or Fox News, it is so clear that they have been indoctrinated by their propaganda. They're drones.
But that's, and see, that brings me to the Jimmy Dore thing, because those people are no different. They're just drones for a different point of view in a particular echo chamber that's suiting their narrative. And again, I'm not saying that he's wrong in what he's saying now. I'm just saying, you know what? It's like the level of like just idol worship in this country in general, and just following people regardless of what they say on all issues. Everybody has. It's like if somebody says something and it's someone you like, then you're just going to agree with it because you like them. And it's so frustrating.
And again, a great example is, you know, everyone was caught, you know, on the Democratic side was led to believe that Trump is so mean to the press and he's so unbecoming. Did you see the way Nancy Pelosi spoke to the press recently when they questioned her about the fact that she gave up $1 trillion in stimulus for this country?
Well, what about
they want to have an answer?
What did she say to what's his face a few months ago? She's like, settle down or calm down. We'll get to
Look what
that.
she did. Look when Wolf Blitzer actually got out of line for a minute and was like, you know how many?
He had half a testicle.
Well, let me tell you
5
something.
seconds.
We were just in D.C. Do you know how many homeless encampments are all over the city? They're everywhere.
Everywhere.
You can't avoid it, but they're trying to. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to do just like they do down here in Fort Lauderdale. They're going to kick them out. They're going to put them in someplace.
And then they put out those spikes so nobody can sit there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Because you know what's, you know, I mean, God forbid Nancy Pelosi or Mitch McConnell would have to walk by any one of these people. But you know what? The truth is most of them are sociopaths. They don't care.
No, they don't care.
You cannot have compassion if you want to be in the most powerful positions in this country. So when everybody gets on Trump, when everybody gets on me and they say what a terrible person I am, they're really wrong because they're all terrible
You know what?
people.
I'm actually looking forward to not having to have that anymore.
Well, he's going to love it when all he has to do is just run a media company and tell everybody how crooked and terrible everybody
I'm so forward
is.
to not having to hear about it, or I'm just so bored of it.
Listen, it's much better when he's just entertaining. He should not be in charge of anything. That's the difference. So with that in mind, we love you guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Do you have anything interesting this week? Tomorrow I'll be at the Garden in the morning.
I'll be at the Garden as well.
And then I don't know if
we'll be small business canvassing. We'll be
canvassing.
out there helping out.
But guys, check out generationalchange.com. If you're local, please sign up to volunteer with us. You get a very cute t-shirt. You get to come to fun things.
Yeah.
And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. We need subscribers.
We're getting there.
All right. Bye, all.